Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine. It can be
do anything you put your mind to.
And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose.
What seems impossible can be done by you.
He's a former Division I basketball player at Marquette University, author of a best-selling book, Walk On Warrior.
It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you.
I am excited to have John Willkom on the podcast.
Nurture the relationships that you have, grow with them, and don't be afraid just to say, you know, my best friend maybe isn't the same guy that he was 10 years ago. That's okay. As you mature in life, relationships are everything.
Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose.
Get your pen and paper out.
Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Paralysis to purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I always say this, what a job I have. I get to interview some of the most intriguing and interesting people in the world, and today is no exception. Our guest today, I've known him, I don't even know how long I've known this guy, but he's a man now. I knew him when he was a college student. He's a former Division I basketball player at Marquette University. He earned his MBA from Loyola University. He is currently an e-commerce executive, and he helped me for a couple of years, I think it was, when I was the head coach at Marquette High School. He's a great guy. He is widely recognized for his passion about the game of basketball, and we're going to talk about some of that today. You know, he's an author of a best-selling book. It's Walk On Warrior, and it is his kind of a memoir, I guess, of his experience growing up with basketball and eventually being a walk-on at Marquette University at a Division I college. And it is filled with all kinds of stuff. He talks about drive, discipline, and the will to win. We talk a lot about perspective, perseverance, and partnerships on our journey from paralysis to purpose. And I think you might need some drive and a few other things to make that happen. So he's a husband and a father, and I'm excited to have John Willkom on the podcast. Welcome, John.
Thanks. I got to call you coach because that's what you've always been to me. And we met almost 20 years ago, which is crazy to think about.
20 years. How do you do math? I'm not.
Crazy.
Somebody's getting older, and it's not me. So you better check your birth certificate.
You still look the same, though. You know, when I first met you, I was trying to fill a gap in my life, and we'll kind of talk about that. But it's crazy because you kind of welcomed me in as a complete stranger, and I ended up helping you as a basketball coach, and that obviously blossomed into a lot of different things over the last 20 or so years. So the first time that I met you, we had traded some emails back and forth, and a couple of the guys that I lived with knew you because they had gone to high school where you were the basketball coach, and so I was done playing college basketball. I was looking for something to stay connected to basketball. And they said, hey, you should go talk to Coach Cooks. So we traded a couple of emails back and forth. He said, meet me at the high school at 3:00 on Thursday. So I showed up and I walked into your office and he just kind of looked at me and he said, I'm thirsty. Like, can you give me some water? And it's like, sure. I guess I can go get you some water. Where's the water fountain? Where do I find a cup? I don't know. So I find a little styrofoam cup and I fill it up. I come back around, walk in and I hand you this cup and you just looked at me like disgusted. Like, why are you holding the cup from the top of the cup? Like, that's where I'm going to put my mouth. Are you kidding me? And I'm thinking, wow, like, look at this guy. I mean, I went to get him some water. I guess my hand was in the wrong spot. He's going to be a real treat to want to coach with. And so it was just funny because we had kind of an awkward conversation. Like, you asked me, like, why aren't you playing basketball anymore?
Did you give me a new cup of water?
What's that?
Did you get me a new cup of water?
Yeah, I think I had to go back and get you a different cup. And I held it from the bottom and just kind of served it up to you. And so we chatted for a bit and then I left and I thought, well, I mean, I have no idea whether I'm going to come and like help out here. This guy probably thinks I'm a total joke, or he's just a huge germaphobe. I don't know, one of the two.
or both.
And so,
Because it's like the funniest story to me ever. Because I think I remember it, but did I do that to him? So anyway,
so yeah, no. And then eventually you called me a couple of days later and said, "Hey, I want you to be like a, assistant on the varsity." And I'm thinking, really? Okay.
that was some good water.
So yeah, I mean, it must have been the second time around.
So John, you briefly talked about you were trying to fill a gap in your life, and that's kind of where our paths crossed. Could you just take us back a little bit to, your basketball, your love for the game of basketball?
So I grew up in a small town in central Wisconsin. I had no real ambition to play, big time college sports. It just wasn't a thing where I grew up, and sometimes I smile because I still mentor a lot of young kids. And some people are like, man, if I grew up here, if I had this type of environment or coaches or these players around me were better, I would be something. I don't really think it matters where you grew up. I think one of the interesting parts about playing basketball at a high level is that you're around guys that sometimes have nowhere else to go. And because of that, there is no second option. So if you're playing basketball or you're playing the piano or whatever you're trying to do, it's always nice when you can kind of have a backup and just say, hey, man, if I'm not good enough or I don't feel like doing this anymore, I'm going to go do something else. But at that level, a lot of times you don't. And, I bring that up just to say, I didn't have a traditional basketball hotbed upbringing, where it's like, if I do these three things, I'll end up on a Division I scholarship somewhere. If I didn't want to play basketball anymore, I was probably going to go back and work a summer job, like picking rocks on a farm, mowing grass, doing landscaping. Those are kind of my options. So, again, I bring up those stories just because, I loved basketball and I thought, hey, if I could do anything, it would be to take my talent as far as it could possibly go. And it just so happened that I ended up at Marquette and I had an opportunity to play on a team that eventually would have a couple NBA players and, played for a pretty legendary coach in Tom Crean. But I was always just very, very grateful for the opportunity because I wasn't necessarily expected to be there. Even when I had opportunities to try out, I think 99% of the people in the gym probably hoped I would quit and just walk away. But I was kind of the last man standing, and it was because I just had kind of a burning desire, a love for the game. I wanted to be around that type of environment. And, deep down, I knew that my alternatives were not very good. And so I think that really motivated me to kind of keep going.
You said, take your talent as far as it can go. And I think that's a transferable skill or thought or a saying or whatever you want to call it. Can you just talk on that and the significance of that, not only athletically, but from an academic standpoint, from a professional standpoint, and how that can become a motivating factor in people's success?
Yeah, I would say 100% of the people I meet have no idea what their ceiling could be. And I think part of that is because we can't ever get there by ourselves. You talk about partnerships, you talk about coaching, you talk about trying to find people around you that have a vision of what you could be. We all need to find those people. You need to find someone that just says, you could be way over here and you don't even see it yet. There are things in you, there are parts of your ability that can be stretched way further than what you think is possible. Just to give you a tangible example of that, I was in great shape playing college basketball. I went into my first strength session. I mean, I had worked hard. I thought out of anybody here, I can withstand what's going to go on for the next hour. And I got my butt absolutely kicked. I had a hard time walking out of the room. And at the end of this workout, our strength coach put, plate after plate after plate on this leg press. And as he put more and more weight on there, I'm like, I've never done this before. I've never physically lifted this much weight at one time. I can't do that. And he's like, you can't leave until you do 20 of these. And so I'm like, man, I'm not going to be able to do one. So I did one. It probably took me 2 minutes maybe just to do number 2. And I got to maybe 5 or 6 and I thought, I cannot do any more. I can't. And I literally sat in that leg press for probably 20, 25 minutes. And I just focused mentally on, I need to do one at a time. Not 20, just one. And so point being is that when I left there, I just leg pressed 20 times more weight than I had ever done one time. I mean, it was crazy. It's crazy the results. Like I physically did it. How? You know, and my body would pay for that for the next like week or so. And I'm like, man, I can't feel my legs. But point being is over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, I was doing this stuff easily. Why? Because I knew like all of a sudden I can go way more. I can do a lot more weight. I'm way stronger than probably what me or someone else thought I was. So I think you need to get stretched. You need to be around people that are going to push you. And the best version of yourself is a version that you probably don't see.
Wow. So you talk about coaching, and I believe everyone needs to coach. And I think we all have blind spots, and it's okay to not be able to see it. And without a coach, they can't get you there. And you said that you had to change your mind in the middle of a very difficult situation and start handling it one lift at a time. Let's talk about perspective and mindset and how important that is to success, and also to being open and what it means to be open to grow. Because I think so many people, I heard something yesterday that there's a difference between hearing and heard. And a lot of people live off what they heard, but they're not current in what they're hearing. And so I found that fascinating, that a lot of people are stuck on things that they already heard that were true when they heard it, but it doesn't apply anymore. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about the whole mental aspect and perspective and how that helped you get through? I think that's a very difficult, that's crazy, 20 of those, and you've never done them. And there was a price you paid, but there was also a gain you received from doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I physically was one of the smaller guys on the team. And so for me to compete in a lot of these workouts, like I needed to get way stronger. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't need to win every drill, but you can't be last. Otherwise, you shouldn't be on a team. Like, well, who are you pushing? Who are you making better if you can't kind of be in that, middle of the pack most of the time? What was interesting is, again, that was my first year. And I used to ask, Todd Townsend was one of our senior captains, great guy. But I'm like, how do you do this for 4 years? And his answer was, take it one drill at a time, one day at a time. If I thought I was going to do this for 4 years, I never would have started. And talk about wise. He wasn't worried about the next drill. He wasn't worried if I miss this shot, we're all going to get on the line and run, and we may be running for the next 20 minutes. But you can't fear what's coming. At Marquette, we didn't have clocks in the gym. No one knew when practice was going to end. There'd be days when if I would have known based on maybe a loss 2 nights before that, what was coming, I'm not walking in there, but you just show up and you do the next thing. And when I was even trying out for the team, I had to play full court 1-on-1 against a good friend of mine. And it's up to 7x1s. And I would watch other guys. If you're down 6-3, right? Chance of you coming back, scoring 7 points, other guy not getting to 7, not good.
Not good.
And if you lose, you got a time sprint in under a minute, and it's set up just so you barely make it, right? So 99% of us would just say, I'm going to save a little energy because I'm going to lose. I'm going to go run that sprint. I'm going to make it so I don't have to run another one, right?
Yes.
And man, I remember talking to a couple of teammates that said, you're going to get to a point mentally where you're going to play that thing out 110% because you don't even think about that sprint. You know, you're down 6-1. I mean, maybe you lose 6-4, and then you go run the sprint and you attack that. And if you don't make it, you attack the next one. And that's a very, very mature mindset.
You know, I often say your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure. You can do more than you could ever think or imagine. You just have to get in there and make it happen. Let's talk a little bit about the book. I think the book is fascinating, not just because I'm in the book. That's not the only reason. You gave me a lot more love in your book than I gave you in my book, but you know I love you. Share a little bit about the book and your hows and whys you got through it.
Yeah. So I've said this before. I never wanted to write a book. You know, I actually started kind of journaling when I was playing college basketball, more because I was experiencing things that were new to me. Things that I thought, I want to remember this. You know, I want to remember the time when a Nike exec came into the locker room and showed me my new shoes. I want to remember the times when, you know, NBA coaches would be around practice. You know, we'd have former NBA players come and play pickup with us. You know, I was meeting people, experiencing things, going through a life that was foreign to me. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to like tell my kids about some of this, you know, long when it's out of my memory. So I had a bunch of notes. Long story short, played college basketball, spent some time coaching with you. I graduate college. I go to work, kind of a quote unquote real job. And, you know, book, the stories, they all just kind of took a backseat. What was crazy is that I never thought I would actually go back to it. And this is where you want to call it divine inspiration. You want to call it just, there was something out there, but, my wife was in a medical residency program and we had to move out to Portland, Oregon. And we were there for 3 years and she was working like 110 hours a week. I mean, it was crazy. I'd wake up, she's gone. You know, I go to sleep, she's gone then too. And there'd be days and days or weeks even where it's like, I hope she's okay. But I thought to myself, I'm like, you know, I can watch a bunch of games, you know, read a bunch of books, watch some movies. But like, what am I going to get out of this experience besides just being bored and lonely? And for whatever reason, this book just kept like coming back into my mind as like, do something with the book, like turn it into something. Go back and like even revisit some of those memories for yourself. And what was interesting is that there was a lot in that book where I kind of shook my head because I had written it 13 years ago. I had written it when I was 19 years old. And I thought, I don't feel the same way now, but I didn't change it. I just left it. And I think one of the cool parts about the book is that there's a lot in there that was written when I was 19. There's a lot in there that was written when I was 33. And perspectives do change. And it's kind of awesome just to say, I was a kid, man. I was a kid going through big time college basketball, tons of pressure. I was taking tons of, you know, classes. I had transferred schools. I had more classes than anybody on my team. But you just kind of figure it out. And I thought, to your point at the beginning, you know, when you finally put it all on paper, there's a point of vulnerability in your own heart where you say, do I really want to share this with the world? And who's gonna want to read this? Maybe nobody.
That was the big thing for me. Like who's going to read this?
Yeah. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to put it out there. And I don't really care who reacts to it, positive or negative. It's my story. And so I did that. And, you know, everything that's happened since then is just kind of, it's icing on a cake that I didn't, you know, ever think I'd ever bake. But here we are. And, you know, when you get messages from people that you've never met saying, I was inspired by this, or I read that chapter about being in the weight room and it's changed the way I think about, you know, preparing for college sports, even trying to make my high school team. That's awesome stuff to me.
So, yeah, so let's talk about the feedback that you get. And as a coach, I can't put into word what it means when a former player comes back or sends you an email or something and they thank you for something that you don't remember doing, but help to shape them and change their lives. I wrote down here, which is a great phrase that I will probably use: writing to remember. Writing to remember, because I never looked at it that way. And you were writing to remember the different things. And for people who are struggling with that book or with their story and trying to get it out, it really is a way to remember.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
How would you define purpose, and have you found yours?
I think that's a really hard question, just because I think our purpose maybe changes at different parts of our lives. My purpose right now is less about me, and it's more about taking care of a wife and 2 little girls. My joy is seeing them do well, be happy, get satisfaction out of life. And obviously that's going to change because they're, 2.5 and 6 months. Their needs are going to change.
Right.
The way they treat me and vice versa is going to change, I'm sure. But no, I think, and this goes back to what I said at the beginning. I don't know if it's my purpose, but I just always wanted to get the most out of what I have to give. I've wanted to be really good to people. I'm super, super competitive, but almost just in a way that says like, I did my best with what I was given. And even like professionally, I work in e-commerce. I help, people sell stuff on all types of websites and get into Target and Walmart and places like that. But I think one calling card for me has just always been to tell people the truth. But I want to add value. I want to add value to people's lives. Maybe it's through storytelling. Maybe it's through taking jogs with them. You name it. But one other thing I want to just touch base on, and I think it's important, and you taught me this, and we've talked about it over the years, is just you have to stay moving. I don't think you find or you get closer to a purpose by staying stagnant. And oftentimes, purposeful activities, purposeful thoughts find you when you're active. You spend too much time down in your luck. I think it's really hard to kind of get to those feelings. You just got to be you got to be in the right headspace.
It's interesting. And I've talked to a number of people doing this podcast, and one of the components of everyone's purpose is somehow serving others or making other people's lives better or investing in other people. And so that seems to be a pretty common element across the board. How you do that and the circumstances that you're in may change, but ultimately that seems to be a driving force. You live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the home of a lot of social unrest over the last 12 to 18 months or whatever the number is now. What's it been like to live in a city not necessarily under siege in a negative way, but under siege in terms of the cry for change and justice? What has that been like for you and your family?
Yeah, no, Minneapolis has certainly been in the forefront with really kind of a revolution. George Floyd was murdered. I think we all were just like, whoa, this is crazy. And obviously, to where we are now, where justice is being served in the right way. I think you feel for everybody going through things. I think it makes you more sensitive to just the circumstantial things that are happening outside of, my small world. People I know. I think it has really opened my mind up to every person I talk to on a daily basis, even though we're stuck in kind of Zoom land. People are going through stuff, that come from different backgrounds. It's like I said at the beginning, like you can't choose, where you grow up or how you grow up or the resources that you have or don't have. And you have to make the most of it. And you have to learn to work with people that are very different than yourself. And I think that, certainly like I've tried to do things here in my community that sometimes are uncomfortable to me, just because kind of going back to the weight room, I don't know what the outcome's going to be, you know, but you kind of extend your heart, you open yourself up, and you just say like, you know, I need to learn to be open to things that are different to me. I need to learn to see things from multiple points of view. And again, I think sometimes if you just do that, you don't necessarily know what the solution is going in, but you open up a dialogue. Again, you stay active, have conversations, and you just hope that spurs kind of the right thoughts in people's hearts and minds.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I thought about some of those skills you learned when you played basketball, because you were in the mix with people who were from different places, different races and all that. And you had to figure out how to become a team and have one common goal of winning. You didn't know how that was going to work. You know, you may not have liked everybody on the team. I mean, who knows? But you weren't you weren't stagnant. You kept moving, and you were able to make a difference. What's next for you? Is there another book on the horizon? I know you just had your second daughter, so your hands are full being a father, and congratulations. You know how I feel about that. But what do you see down the horizon? What's next?
There's a lot coming down the pipe here for me. I'm actually starting a new job. It's going to be a much bigger role than I've ever experienced. Again, it's new. It's kind of scary. I'm going to be working and leading a group of people that right now I haven't met yet. So I'm excited for that challenge. I might actually be writing another book. It's not going to be about me. I've been approached to kind of ghostwrite a book. And so again, I don't know when I'm going to have time to do this. I've just started kind of tinkering with the idea. But who knows? I don't want to commit to anything because I know the type of work and the process that's going to go into this.
How did that come about? Everybody doesn't get asked to ghostwrite.
I had reached out to someone that I knew in a past life that has had a ton of professional success. And again, I'm not far enough into this where I can say who this is, but I will soon. And it was weird. To be completely honest with you, I was mowing my grass last summer, and I thought, what would it be like to write this person's book? Like, man, be crazy. What a story. Send this person an email. Okay. I hear back in December. It's out of the blue. It's like, oh, really? You're interested in this? Then dark. And then, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, this person's like, I really want to write this book and I want you to write it. And it's like, whoa, okay. So I'm starting a new job. I've got 2 young daughters at home. I got a lot going on. I don't know when I'm gonna have time to do this, but it was my idea in the first place. And I think it's a good one. So let's see what we can maybe do. So more to come there.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. I mean, every time I talk to you, you stretch me as well and make me think, because, you know, the one thing that I've learned over the last 18 months, and we've talked about some of those issues I've had, is the importance of reinventing yourself and rebranding yourself and finding out what other avenues are available to utilize the skills that you have. Obviously, you can write. You got a best-selling book. So the question becomes, how do you leverage that skill and maximize that, like you said earlier? How do you take that talent as far as it can go? And here's another situation that you're going to be stretched to figure that out. And let's just say it on the podcast right now. It will be a best-selling book. I'm just telling you right now. So I don't know what you think about that, but we'll play this back after it's done. Can I write the forward or anything?
We'll have to get you involved. You know, it's one story I want to tell on this podcast too, because I think it's one of the best ones with you in particular, is that me and you were coaching a basketball team probably 18 years ago, and we had a good team. Okay. But we had played maybe 2 games, and we were playing in kind of a preseason tournament. We were playing the best team from the state of Minnesota, who was arguably #1 team in Minnesota. they were a team that nobody in this tournament wanted to play. In fact, the tournament director had a hard time finding an opponent because everyone's like, I don't want to play them because we're going to get blown out. It's bad for the kids' confidence. Like, we don't want that loss on our record early in the season. You're like, we'll play anybody. So long story short, we play this game. And at halftime, I think we're winning. A couple minutes to go, it's like tie game. And we end up losing this barn burner of a game by a couple points. And everybody walks off the court like, whoa, like that was crazy, right? And the point of this story is not just another random game, but all these media people come up to you after the game and you got a bunch of microphones in your face and there's a bunch of cameras like, can you believe what just happened? And I'm standing there and you're like, should have won the game. We should have won. And people were like, well, what do you mean? Like, you just took the best team in the state of Minnesota, like down to the wire. You guys are huge underdogs. Like, you had no chance, like you shouldn't have been close in that game. And what I always thought was interesting was that snippets on the radio, the 30-second clip on TV, story that was written in the papers, every single person that read that was like, whoa, this wasn't a guy that was like, we just took the best team to the wire. It was a mindset of like, I'm not anchoring myself as this mediocre team. Like, we should be the best team in the state of Wisconsin, and we should have just beat the best team in Minnesota. And so I bring that up because it's an awesome story. That team ended up having a tremendous season. We won the conference title. We were not favored in, I think, the top 3. But the kids and their parents after that game were like, we should be the best team in the state because our coach just said we should be. And so very, very bold move. Obviously, like you said, stretching talent, stretching coaches, stretching the whole program of like, this could completely blow up because we really don't have that good of players and we'll be lucky to win 10 games. But no, we won like 20 games and we maybe lost 2. And every single person involved in that program believed it was possible.
Yeah, well, I thanks for sharing that story. And as a coach, you don't get into it not to win. I just don't know who does that. And I also understood and still understand that as long as you're learning, you're winning. And so that may have shown up as a loss on the record book, but I thought that was one of the greatest learning experiences that our team could have. And it gave them an opportunity to see themselves differently because of what they just accomplished. It goes back to your weightlifting story. Once you got the 20 reps in, you're like, well, you know what? I actually can do this. I actually can get it done. So that's a great story. I forget, I coached a lot of games and I forgot about, we did play them and they were good.
We're good.
They were a good team.
That's David and his guest, former Marquette University basketball player John Willkom, on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. In just a minute, they'll discuss how not to let fear itself paralyze you. There are so many great stories and inspirational lessons in David's own book, Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose. It's now an audiobook too, and in this sample from Chapter 10, entitled Pride, David recalls his new role in the Duke basketball program under Coach K. Returning for his second year of graduate school, he had hoped to be offered the position of graduate assistant with the team. Instead, Coach asked him to take on the less prestigious role of team manager. To continue to be part of the Duke basketball program, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, David decided to swallow his pride.
I found myself filling water bottles, chasing down loose balls, doing the players' laundry, barking out encouragements, and doing anything the coaches asked me to do. As I did this, I pushed myself to be the best ball shagger and Gatorade brewer on the team. It must have been my Wisconsin roots kicking in. I wasn't just a manager. I was a manager helping the team win. That was my perspective. Everything was important, whether it was filling water bottles or executing the full court trap. Cutting corners wasn't an option, especially within Coach K's culture. There was purpose in the process. The attitude I took going into each task mattered as much as the outcome. I learned to do one thing at a time, the right way, and give each experience my full attention. I was committed to doing everything with excellence, yes, even if my task was filling water bottles. Coach K took notice. In addition to my duties as a manager, I had also been able to talk game strategy with the coaching staff. In Coach K's words, which I heard later on, he said eventually they realized I knew a little something about the game. He began including me on film sessions, coaches' meetings, and player workouts, and I was given an increased role in helping to coach in practices. I even had the pleasure of periodically addressing the team. Yes, I was still a manager, but I had been given a promotion of sorts. Just like Tony Lang in St. Petersburg, Coach K observed my persistence, my dedication, my punctuality, and my attention to detail, completely unbeknownst to me. The players took notice too. Thanks to Bobby Hurley and Chris Collins, I became known amongst the team as Skooks. It was a term of endearment. I had become a part-time coach, part-time psychiatrist, and part-time teacher because I mentored players in everything basketball, breakups, and business. I got to know these players, this family, on an intimate level. My persistence made me part of the program, and Coach K and the players made me part of the Duke family.
That's David Cooks narrating his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose. It's now available to purchase wherever audiobooks are sold. Now, let's get back to part 3 of David's conversation with John Willkom.
You talked about not being stationary, and one of my quotes is that excuses don't stop you. Stopping is what stops you. And I try to keep people moving. But I also understand how is it that you can, when you're afraid of something or it's scary to you, how do you move forward and get past that moment of paralysis? Right now, you're about to go into a unknown situation. And you said it's a little scary. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. But how do you've been through enough now. What's the steps you're about to take to make sure that fear doesn't keep you from performing?
Always just believed in being very prepared. I don't think there's any excuses today with, most people have an internet access. You can learn anything. You don't need an MBA. You don't need me or you. Follow some people, read some books, read some articles, stay up to date on what the latest and greatest is in your industry. Take a good look in the mirror and just say, hey, if I want my boss's job, what don't I have? Where am I missing like actual tangible skills? What do people say about me? Back in early in my career, I managed one employee. He happened to be a guy. Someone told me, they said, you can't manage women. And it's like, why not? Like, I've just never had an opportunity to. I think I'd be a great leader to anyone, to be honest with you. And so it's funny because you use that stuff as motivation, but at the same time, you said being hearing versus heard. It's like, I'm always just trying to be a good listener. And instead of like getting riled up and my heart starts pounding, like, can't believe they just said that about me. It's like, what was the truth in what they said? How do I take it and learn something? What's my plan of action? If they say I can't do these things, like, I need to talk to some people. I need to read some stuff. Am I just uneducated? My soft skills poor? Who can help me with some of these things? But you have to keep getting better. I just think human nature is to dwell on all those things, and you get caught up and you spend 70% of your day like worrying about what was said. It's like spend 70% of your day on improving it. Take the time you need to kind of grieve and feel bad for yourself or call your mom. But then you gotta get past it. And you have to be able to then just say, like, I'm going to do things. One guy I love David Goggins, who's kind of crazy, best-selling book. Yep. But he's also, he's legendary for saying, I want to be uncommon amongst uncommon men. And part of that too, for me, is like, if I want to swim with the big dogs, I need to go head to head with some of these people. I need to be good enough to play in that league. And so I think that's just the other thing, is like, if you feel like you're the best in, maybe the C League, find ways to move up, and don't worry so much about like your status. You gotta stretch yourself, and you gotta be willing to like kind of go back down the ladder and build yourself back up.
In my book, Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose, I talk about the importance of, I call it the 3 R's: reflect, regroup, and relaunch. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, where you assess where you are and get yourself together and then get back in the game. And then you also talked about, I interviewed Coach Jim Johnson. I asked him a question on the podcast about how did he keep his high school team at such a high level for such a long period of time? And his response to me was growth. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, a lot of teams, once they get to a certain level, they become satisfied and they don't realize that they have to continue to get better to sustain where they are. Because if they don't, someone will probably get better than them. And so that the importance of growth and sustained success can't be understated. And you said a mouthful about taking initiative and taking control of your own life by researching and reading and staying current and those kind of things. So those are great tips. Any closing words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with the audience?
I don't know if it's closing words of wisdom, but I'm grateful to be on the show. I'm grateful for this relationship. It was weird for me because I stopped playing college basketball. And I thought, how do I stay connected to the game in some way? And I randomly got connected to you, and you said, come help out. I have no idea like what you're going to be to this program or what my relationship to you is going to be, but you can come be around the program. And so, again, I had zero ego, probably because of my age at that point. But how many of us would go into a situation and just say like, I'm not going to do this for free or learn, or I need to know exactly like what it's going to be and how you're going to treat me. And I think we just need to be open to those types of things, because obviously I was there for a purpose. We were building something that would turn into a 20-year friendship. That wasn't just a coaching job. And I think at the end of the day, like, what's meaningful, like what's my purpose in life? I look back and I just say some of the most meaningful things to me are the relationships with folks like yourself, over a long, long period of time. And speaking of growth, we're very different people, and yet we've both grown in so many ways, and we've failed in a lot of things, and we've stayed in touch through, you name it, tons of stuff, personally, professionally, like just been completely down in the dumps and like gotten picked back up. And so ultimately, like anyone listening to this, just feel like nurture the relationships that you have, grow with them, and don't be afraid just to say, my best friend maybe isn't the same guy that he was 10 years ago. That's okay. And when I hate the word old, but as you mature in life, relationships are everything. And you want to kind of keep those close to the vest. And if anything's, been realized, I guess, during a pandemic, it's just make a little bit of extra effort to reach out to the people that you care about. And I think ultimately, like, those are good things for the heart.
Well, John, thank you for being on the podcast today. It was fabulous seeing you again and talking to you again. I don't get to see you and hug you as much as, I would like, but these are always good times. And so thanks for coming and sharing your story with us. How can people get a hold of you if they'd like to, well, I don't think you're going to have time to write a book for them, but if they like to get a hold of you or your book, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, no, it was a pleasure being on the show. Had a great time today. You can reach me on LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm pretty much in all those places, and just find the book on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
There you go. Well, until next time, this is David Cooks reminding you that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
I said, Mom, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. God, give me a one-way ticket to America. Give me everything you got. Put everything I own. And we're going.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
I'm excited to have Frank Cumberbatch with us today.
I don't know what I'm going to do when I get there, but I promise you this. When I get out of there, your life is different. And she said, son, I believe you.
Paralysis to purpose.